Hello students, welcome to the class on lateral earth pressure. In this class we will try to discuss about how lateral earth pressure comes in practical situations, what is lateral earth pressure and what is retaining structure, and how the soil which is retained at different levels by a retaining structure is going to induce the lateral earth pressure, and what are the different states of lateral earth pressure, and we will try to see what are the theories related to this and how to solve practical problems. Now let us get into a practical situation where soil mass always try to be in equilibrium. Now let us say now you have dumped some material. Now what happens? This soil tries to reach an equilibrium and tries to come to a stable equilibrium. This soil mass, which is at different levels, which is dumped randomly, it tries to form a natural slope for its stability. Now when this happens, there will be a main force of gravity because of the weight of this mass. Okay, what is going to happen? There will be a sliding stresses induced or shearing stresses induced. Now let us take a practical situation. Now this is a equilibrium condition. Now we have studied in engineering mechanics. This will be something related. This is called the angle of repose. Now in a practical situation, when you got some land like this, it is under equilibrium. It is a natural slope. Now due to some activity, let us say there is a road here. Okay, now there is a road. Now I want to increase the width of the road. Then what I do is I try to make a vertical excavation. Now when I make a vertical excavation, will this soil which has been removed, if I remove this portion, will it be stable when I have a vertical cut? No, it needs to be retained. Now what happens? This tries to again form an axial slope. It will slide. Therefore when I want to hold back this soil at different levels, what I do is I try to provide a retaining structure. Now when I want to retain this soil at different levels, I provide a structure which is called a retaining wall. Okay, this wall is going to retain the soil and I can level this. Now usually what we do is we remove some of the material beyond this and we try to replace the different material. This is called the backfill material. I'll also discuss about what type of backfill material has to be replaced here and what are the problems associated with this if you don't have a good material which is suitable for the stability of the retaining structure. Then what is meant by this is the retaining wall. Now what do you mean by a retaining wall? It is a structure which is used to retain the soil at different levels. When the soil is to be retained at different levels. Now when I remove this material, now I have got sufficient area. In cities, okay, such kind of practical requirements will be there. Then what I can do, I can increase the width of the road. Now this will be the road. Now I got sufficient. Then I'll have drainage provided. Everything is done as per the requirement. This practical situation needs to have a retaining structure. Now retaining walls are not always like this. Okay, we've got different types of retaining walls. Let us try to understand what are the different types of retaining walls, retaining structures. The types of retaining structures, retaining walls or retaining, let us take the retaining walls only. What are the types? Basically we can divide them into rigid type of retaining walls and we got flexible type of retaining walls. In the rigid type, okay, now let us try to understand why they are called rigid. In this we have got gravity type retaining walls and semi-gravity type retaining walls. In the flexible listing, we have got sheet piles. In In the sheet piles again we have got two types. Okay, one is the anchored. The sheet piles are also called anchor, I would say bulkheads. They are also called bulkheads. These are called bulkheads or sheet piles, and in that we have got anchored bulkhead and actually it's first one is a cantilever type of retaining sheet piles, and we have got anchored bulkheads. In the gravity type of retaining structures, basically the retaining wall performs based on its mass. Because of this weight which is there, now there is a lateral force or the driving force along this wedge of the soil which is trying to move. This is trying to create some thrust on the retaining structure. Now if it has to be stable so that it can retain this soil mass which wants to drive away and come to a natural equilibrium, this is retained because of the mass of because of the gravity. Therefore it is called gravity type of retaining walls. This you can see in most of the cities and in urban areas. Semi-gravity type of retaining walls are the improvements over the gravity type, in which okay, you got RCC type of you got the cantilever type RCC walls, then you got counterfort retaining structures, RCC type of retaining. Here we use masonry, here we use RCC type. Therefore, because of the use of reinforcement, you can reduce the mass required and it will be stable because of its reinforcement. Now, whatever may be the type of the retaining structures, see here this more important of this sheet piles is where do you use this? This is used okay if you have got waterfront structures. For example, you got an harbour region. Along the shore you got a harbour. Okay, what happens? You got water and you need to have some structures for loading and unloading. Now the ships will come to the shore and we need to have platforms. These are called quay walls. Quay walls, okay. The pronunciation is quay. Okay. Now near the port, okay, this is required for unloading and loading the commodities. Then what happens? Okay, we need to have supporting. Now we'll have natural soil, and this will be in the wet condition, completely submerged. Now what happens? This is going to be very difficult to have a mass. Okay, if you have a gravity retaining wall, so let us say I've got a gravity retaining wall. What happens? This is going to sink. Okay, to have stability of the retaining wall, it is very difficult. Therefore, what we do is, in such a situation, we are going to have thin retaining structures which are very flexible and easy to drive in such kind of situation. Now, this type of retaining structure is called a sheet pile. The sheets are driven, and this length where it is anchored, okay, this is called cantilever because it acts as a cantilever and it can move like this. Okay, the stability is because of its depth of embedment. It has got its stability. Now, in case where you are not able to get that stability, what we do is we try to anchor it. We take a tie rod and we try to anchor it. Okay. All these details we are going to study in another elective, in an elective called earth and earth retaining structures. We can get more details about all this design of the gravity retaining wall or maybe semi-gravity retaining walls. We will study in RCC, and this will be in an elective in soil mechanics. Now let us not worry about all those things. Whatever may be the type of retaining structure, one thing is that it will be subjected to lateral thrust. Now I need to design, what is my role? I need to know what is the lateral pressure that is coming. Now I need to design it, okay? Because it need to be stable. To design that, let us try to understand what is a retaining structure, typical retaining structure, how it looks, and what are the terms associated with that. If this is the retaining structure, now we will have, this is the backfill, now this is the back of the retaining structure, this is called the face of the retaining structure or the retaining wall. This is a typical gravity type retaining wall, and this is the ground surface. Ground surface may be horizontal or it may be inclined. This angle is called the surcharge angle. It may be positive or it may be also negative. Sometimes it may be positive, sometimes it may be negative, depending upon the situation. Now I am talking about the backfill. What is this backfill material? This is called the toe and this is called the heel. Now for stability we will be having some soil at the front. Now this backfill material, now we are going to have some material replaced from the natural soil. What is this backfill material? This material should be usually corrosionless or having very good permeability. This is a preferred material because when it rains, the water should percolate and it should pass through this. Therefore, we usually provide V-poles. It's very important. We should have good drainage arrangement done. These are called V-poles. Though it is not part of the chapter, but I want you to have an understanding, and you are going to have this filter material. You are going to properly protect it because it has to be, so that this backfill material, when it rains, the soil should not carry the fine particles and clog these V-poles. Without these V-poles, what happens? It is going to create pore water pressure. Pore water pressure is going to increase the stress and it may lead to failure. Therefore, it is very essential to, I have seen in my master's program when I was doing my master's at Surathkal, because it's an area where it rains heavily. My teacher, Professor Satnam Shetty, when we attended a trip for a local site visit, he showed us, see how retaining walls have failed because of the lack of provision of these V-poles. V-poles are very essential. The second aspect is the backfill material. We should have a highly corrosionless material which has got very good permeability. These are two aspects in a retaining structure. Now this is called the heel and this is called the toe. Now there will be a sliding, there will be some mass of the soil of the vacuum material which slides. When it tries to move away, some part of the soil which participates in the movement, this is called the soil wedge. This acts as if it is part of the retaining wall and it moves and it slides past the zone here. Okay, this will be stationary. Okay, this will be moving down. Okay, this is either it moves down or it moves up depending upon the movement of the wall. Now let us try to discuss about those different conditions under which the movement will take place. Now, when this retaining wall is static, okay, it has got some pressure from the soil which is in contact with this retaining wall. That pressure is called lateral earth pressure. Actually, it is the earth pressure which is exerting in the lateral direction. Therefore, I call it as the lateral earth pressure. That is the title of the chapter, lateral earth pressure, because it's acting in the lateral direction. Now, what are the different types of lateral earth pressure? Now, we need to understand that either the wall can move away from the fill. What happens when the soil is trying to thrust? If the earth pressure is too much, the wall starts moving away from the backfill In that condition, what happens? There is a mobilization of shear stress along this. Okay, what is happening? This is the driving force. It is coming downward, and there is a resisting force in the upward direction. This is the, I will try to use green color for this resisting force, because the driving force, this is the resisting force, and this is the driving force. Now what is happening? Because of the resistance force which is trying to resist to the moment, the pressure goes on increasing. Now if I try to draw the variation of the pressure, if I draw a typical variation. Now when the wall is moving away from the fill, when it is stationary, you will have some pressure, that will be stationary pressure, or at rest pressure. Then what happens? The pressure goes on reducing and it comes to a stationary value or a constant value. This pressure, when the wall, if I represent the lateral pressure as P, okay, the suffix A indicates that the soil is active. What is happening here? The soil is active, therefore it is an active condition. When the wall moves away from this, I call it as an active case or active condition. When the wall moves towards the fill, it is called passive, because the soil is passive, because the retaining wall is retaining on the, it is trying to thrust the soil. Therefore the soil is passively bearing the pressure from the retaining structure. Therefore the condition when the wall moves away from the fill, that is called an active condition, and the active condition, the pressure is PA. Now when it is stationary, this is P0, at rest condition. Then when the wall starts moving towards the fill, what happens? The pressure goes on increasing and it reaches a constant value. This value is called the passive pressure PP. Now what is happening when the wall moves away towards the fill, what happens? This gets changed. The driving force is in the upward direction and the resisting force will be in the downward direction. Because the driving force, the stress is increasing, the soil has to exert more pressure, therefore this is going to be more. Therefore always PP is greater than PA, and in between you will have P0. P0 is called at rest condition. At rest condition. Okay. Now having understood this is towards the fill. Having understood the variation of lateral pressure, this is the lateral pressure. So in the test they may ask you draw a retaining wall and explain what happens when the movement of the wall takes place away from the fill or towards the fill through a variation of the lateral pressure. Then you will have to draw this diagram, draw this variation and explain what is happening, and we should give an explanation why the pressure PA is reducing after the wall movement. Now what happens? Now we need to understand, this is when the active case or the passive case has to take place, the pressure to take place, that the condition to take place. The soil is in a active condition, therefore it is in a state of plastic equilibrium. What do you mean by plastic equilibrium? It is equilibrium but it has deformed. When plastic equilibrium takes place, there is a lot of wall movement. Wall movement has to take place. Sufficient wall movement take place, then only you can have either passive case or active case. In most of the cases it will be at rest condition. Therefore, elastic equilibrium means the at rest condition, which is also called K0 condition. This is called the K0 condition. So having understood what are the lateral earth pressure and the variation, we will try to go further in understanding to derive the expressions for this lateral pressure. How to find out? We need to quantify, because unless we quantify, we will not be in a position to design the retaining structure. Therefore, we will discuss about now. Let us take the at rest condition. At rest condition, now let us take at rest condition. Now let us take a retaining wall. Now this is, let us take a small element. Now let us try to understand the state of stress. The vertical direction will have sigma 1, that will be the major load or the major stress. Then in the horizontal direction we have sigma 3, which is nothing but the horizontal stress. Now if you take, now perpendicular to the board, see it is something like this, we have got a retaining structure. Now let us take an element, this element, okay, if I try to draw this element, this element is like this. I'll take an element. Now let me try to draw a three-dimensional view of how the element is looking and what are the stresses acting in it, on it. Okay, now this is the isometric view how the element looks. Therefore I will erase this, okay, so that you get a picture of what is happening to the element. Now in the lateral direction, we have sigma 3. In the vertical direction you got sigma 1. Okay, this is the intermediate principal stress sigma 2. In this direction we have sigma 3, and in the vertical direction it is sigma 1. This is the state of stress of an element. Now let us try to do, these are the major principal stresses, means the principal stresses. It is, sigma 1 is the major principal stress, sigma 3 is the minor principal stress, and sigma 2 is the intermediate principal stress. Now let us try to derive an expression for the. Now what happens, there is a strain in this direction. Okay, now what is the strain in the lateral direction? Let us, now since this is a K0 condition, K0 condition means it is at rest condition, means there is no strain in the lateral direction, there is no movement towards the field or away from the field. Therefore, in the epsilon, if the epsilon is the strain is 0 in the lateral direction. Okay, now let us try to use Hooke's law. Using generalized Hooke's law, we can write the strain in the lateral direction. Now the strain taking place in one direction is, when there is a strain taking place in one direction, there will be also strain, because we have got strain taking place in the other directions. We are going to use the term called Poisson ratio. Poisson ratio. Now to this Poisson ratio is nothing but the lateral strain to the axial strain on the longitudinal strain. Therefore, now what is mu? Lateral strain, let us call L, and this as A. Therefore, the lateral strain is equal to into mu into axial strain. And also we know the Young's modulus is equal to stress by strain, or strain is equal to sigma by E. Now using these things, okay, I can write sigma 1 by E minus mu times of sigma this is sigma 3 by E, sigma 1 by E minus of mu times of sigma 2 by E. Now E being a common factor, let us take E outside. This becomes sigma 3 minus of mu times of sigma 1 plus sigma 2. Now students, we know that this is at rest condition, therefore at rest condition there is no strain in the lateral direction, therefore sigma 3 must be 0. If I equate this equal to 0, I get something like this. Now let us represent sigma 3 is equal to P naught and sigma 1 is equal to sigma V. Therefore when I substitute here, I get E cannot be, and also E cannot be equal to 0, the Young's modulus cannot be equal to 0, therefore what happens? You will get sigma 3 minus of mu times of sigma 1 minus sigma 2 equal to 0, and when I substitute, this becomes P naught minus mu times of sigma 1 is sigma V minus of, sorry, this is not minus plus, this is. Now when I open this bracket, what happens? P naught minus mu times of sigma V minus of mu times of P naught equal to 0. Therefore these are the terms which are having P naught, therefore I can take P naught into 1 minus of mu, and this will go to the right hand side, this becomes mu times of sigma V, therefore P naught is equal to, right here, P naught or P naught is equal to mu by 1 minus of mu into sigma V. Now taking this quantity as some constant, because it is a constant of the material, that K naught is known as the coefficient of earth pressure at rest. Now we'll subsequently discuss about what is meant by coefficient of earth pressure. This is K naught, where K naught is equal to mu by 1 minus of mu. Now let us discuss about what is in the previous class I discussed about what is meant by mu. Okay, the definition of mu is the pulse ratio is nothing but the lateral strain to the longitudinal strain, and we spent sufficient time discussing about the physical significance of the pulse ratio for our sound mechanics problems. Now we'll understand the typical values of mu. Mu usually will be, for clays, will be around 0.45. Sometimes it is a very soft clay and it is having a lot of plasticity, you can take even 0.5 in the absence of data. Since this is a constant, okay, I can take it as, because mu is a constant for that material. Now what is the definition of coefficient of earth pressure? The coefficient of earth pressure is nothing but the ratio of the lateral stress or the horizontal stress to the vertical stress, that we call it as the coefficient of earth pressure. Now why do I call it as a coefficient? Now what is the other type of pressure we are going to have? The hydraulic pressure. The pressure exerted by any fluid is the hydraulic pressure. That pressure, if you have got any particle, the pressure exerted by water, if it is surrounded by water or any fluid, will be same in any direction. But here what happens, now the soil particles, now because of the stress which is coming here, vertical stress, because of the gravitation force, you are getting a lateral stress. Now the lateral stress this lateral stress is always, it bears some ratio times of the vertical stress. Either it can be less than 1 or more than 1 depending upon the condition, whether the wall is moving away from the fill or it is moving towards the fill. Therefore, this pressure always, this horizontal stress has some coefficient times of the vertical stress. Therefore, I take the ratio of the horizontal to the vertical as the coefficient of earth pressure. And that K naught means it is not for the static condition or at rest condition. Now let us try to see what do you call for the two plastic equilibrium conditions. Now you got plastic equilibrium means it is at the verge of movement or verge of failure, not a verge of movement, verge of failure. And when it is not deforming, it is called an elastic condition. Now you got plastic equilibrium. It is still in equilibrium. It has not failed. It is at the verge of failure. When you use plastic equilibrium means at verge of failure. Please understand this term. Verge of failure. Then you got elastic equilibrium. Still it is deforming, but it is in the elastic state. Failure not reached. Therefore, for the first one, for the plastic equilibrium, we have got two types of states. In the plastic equilibrium state, we have the active case, active condition. Done. When the wall moves towards the fill, we have got the passive condition. Students, we call this, for the active condition, the coefficient K is denoted by K suffix small a. Sometimes some authors prefer to use capital A, both are accepted. Then for passive condition, it is Kp. Okay. For elastic equilibrium, you have got at rest condition. K naught. Now let us try to we have already derived an expression for K naught. This is mu by 1 minus of mu. This is already done. Now what is the value for this? What is the expression for this? We need to explore. Now let us try to understand how to get that expressions for the plastic equilibrium conditions. Before going to that, let us try to understand in terms of a Mohr circle how to draw. Now what's happening in the arbitrary condition, what happens, this is a retaining structure. Now if I take an element, in the active case what happens, the soil is active, it is trying to thrust this, the wall is trying to move here. The vertical stress is sigma V, which is equal to the major principal stress. This is the depth of the element under consideration. The horizontal stress is the minor principal stress. Now let us try to draw the Mohr diagram and try to understand what are the salient points. Now if I try to understand in terms of the traditional specimen or a typical loaded specimen, sigma 1. Now the sample will fail. This is the failure plane. It will fail at an angle equal to alpha, which is 45 degrees plus pi by 2. Student, this is very clear from your basics in Geotechnical Engineering 1, where in shear strength chapter we studied about the failure plane and its inclination with respect to the major principal plane, which is the horizontal plane. The horizontal is nothing but the major principal plane. Now let us try to, and for any material, it has got any soil sample, it has got its failure envelope. This is the failure envelope. We usually call it as FE. Now let us try to understand. Okay, usually this will be a symmetrical. This will be a symmetrical one. Okay, only we take the upper half. Now if this is the sigma 3, this is the normal stress axis, sigma n. Let us take the lack of space, let us try to take this is sigma 3. Now at this point, okay, now what happens, this goes on increasing, then you have a Mohr circle. Let me draw the Mohr circle at failure. Okay, this appears something like this. Now this is the failure plane, this is angle alpha. Now in this case you see the minor principal stress is in the lateral direction, and this is the horizontal one, this is sigma 3. Therefore the minor principal stress is acting in the lateral direction, therefore this is the minor principal plane, and major principal stress is acting in the vertical direction, and the horizontal plane is the major principal plane. Now this is the minor principal plane. Now based on that, if I try to draw, now what will be my direction of my major? The horizontal is the major principal plane, and this is the point where it is meeting. This is the failure plane. This is the failure envelope. Please don't get confused with failure envelope and failure plane. And this is the minor principal plane. See, in textbooks you don't get all this information. I am trying to give all this additional information. This is the minor principal plane. Now this is the pole. Let me call it as P1. This is the P1 is the pole. That is the original planes. You got the major principal plane, minor principal plane, and the failure plane. Now this is your sigma 1. Now if you take the passive case, what happens? The passive pressure will be more. The passive pressure will be more. Therefore, if I try to draw for a passive condition, this is how it looks. This is the Mohr circle for the passive case. Now how will be, now this is the pole P2 for the, this is for active case, this is for passive case. Let us get into the, now in a passive case what happens, your element will be subjected to, this will be the vertical stress, this will be the minor principal stress, now this will be the horizontal stress, which will be the, now there will be a change in the reversal of your major and minor principal stress, and this is the depth of the element under consideration. Because of that, what happens, your horizontal stress is in major principal stress, therefore your sigma h is equal to sigma 1. Okay, now I need to understand how now this will be because the horizontal plane is the minor principal plane. The horizontal plane will be the minor principal plane. And the vertical plane will be this will be the major principal plane. Therefore, when I draw this, okay, this will be unlike in the previous case, okay, this will be the major principal plane, and the horizontal will be the minor principal plane. Therefore, this is the point at which all the planes are originating, and this is the point from where you are touching the failure point. Let me call this as F2, this is F1. Okay, this is F1 dash, this is as F2 dash. Okay, this inclination will be, now actually the failure plane will be always inclined with respect to the major principal plane. This will be angle alpha, this is always 45 degrees plus pi by 2. Therefore, what should be this angle? Out of 90, if I subtract, this will be 45 degrees minus pi by 2. This is how the planes, so this is the plane, inclination of the plane for an active case, and this is the inclination of the plane for the passive case. This is the diagram. Now you may try to solve some problems using Mohr circle to solve the lateral earth pressure. Okay, you can also work out, you can represent the state of stress by using Mohr's diagram. Now we'll go to the next case. What is the relationship between principal stresses at failure? We take whether it's a passive case or an active case. At plastic equilibrium means at the verge of failure, when all the resistive forces are mobilized, then it is likely, it's a limiting condition that it is likely to undergo failure. At that condition, I can try to write a relationship between the principal stresses sigma 3 times per alpha plus 2c tan alpha. Students, I told you that for a backfill material, usually we use a cohesionless material. Therefore, cohesionless backfill material, which is usually used, therefore C will be 0. C equal to 0 for cohesionless material. Therefore, what happens to this expression? Sigma 1 equal to sigma 3 times per alpha. Now let us take the active case. For an active case, sigma 1 is equal to sigma v, okay, then sigma 3 is equal to sigma h. Now I know that the ratio sigma h by sigma v is equal to k, and I will represent it as Ka for active case. Now what is sigma h here? Okay, sigma h is the sigma 3. Now let us try to use this expression. Now sigma 1 is equal to sigma 3 times per alpha. Now what happens to sigma 1? Sigma 1 is sigma p is equal to sigma h times per alpha. Now if I take this ratio sigma h by sigma v, it becomes 1 over times per alpha. This is what it becomes 1 over times per alpha. This is obtained from this. Okay, now 1 over times per alpha is equal to cots per alpha. This becomes 1 minus of sin phi by 1 plus sin phi. Therefore, Ka is equal to 1 minus of sin phi by 1 plus sin phi. Now let us take a active case, a passive case, and try to understand how it looks. For a passive case, your sigma 1 is equal to sigma h and sigma v is equal to, sigma 3 is equal to sigma v. Therefore, if I substitute in this expression, sigma 1 is equal to sigma 3 times per alpha. Okay, your sigma 1 is sigma h sigma 3 is sigma v times per alpha. Therefore, sigma h by sigma v is equal to times per alpha. Therefore, this becomes 1 plus sin phi by 1 plus 1 minus of sin phi. Now, I will summarize and write all these expressions so that you will have to remember in the numericals. When you are solving the numericals, you need all these expressions. Therefore, to the side I am writing for an active case. Active case, we have Ka is equal to cot square alpha, which is equal to 1 minus of sin phi by 1 plus sin phi. Therefore, what happens? Your phi value, whatever you see, the denominator is more than the numerator. Therefore, this is always less than 1. Then Kp is equal to tan square alpha, which is equal to 1 plus sin phi by 1 minus of sin phi is always greater than 1. And K naught is equal to mu by 1 minus of mu. Okay, it will be in between the Kp value. Therefore, Ka is less than K naught is less than Kp. This is the therefore it should be whenever where phi is the angle of interflexion. If you know the angle of interflexion, I can substitute and I can get my Ka value and I can get my Kp value. And if I know my Poisson's ratio, I can get this K naught value. This is about. We'll continue with the different theories of earth pressure. We've got Rankine's theory and Coulomb's theory. In fact, Coulomb's theory was given in earlier to Rankine's theory, which is more practical. Rankine's theory became more popular in the 20th century, but Coulomb's theory is more practical. We'll try to discuss about the two theories in detail, and Rankine's theory will discuss all the different cases. We'll try to see what are the assumptions, what are the shortcomings of those assumptions, and how we can solve for different practical conditions of the retaining structure with different loading conditions, whether you got a dry soil or you got a moist soil or you got a submerged soil, you got layer deposits, you got surcharge, and you got a vertical backfill, you got a vertical back of the retaining wall, or you got an inclined back with the surcharge. All these conditions will work out in a detailed way. And also when you discuss about the assumptions, I am going to give you the physical significance of each and every assumption. The textbooks will simply list the assumptions, but you need to understand what are the different assumptions, why they are made, idealized assumptions, and what are the shortcomings of that. And we try to see more this Coulomb's theory and how that is more practical. Based on the Coulomb's theory, we have got graphical constructions, very conceptual things and very fundamental things, which was remote. Okay, we have introduced once again to the syllabus, which is very important to understand Reban's graphical method and Kalman's graphical method. But in your syllabus, you have got only for active case, and passive case you can study from the literature or from textbooks. Okay, we'll discuss about those graphical procedures and try to work out various numerical examples. Okay, we'll continue in the next class.